Hey everybody, I'm back. It's Scott Gold. Well, today is a special day in my neighborhood. It's a day when fights and arguments break out in the street. It's the day when residents are entitled to deposit any type of garbage they want at the curb for a massive pickup. And residents will put sofas, furniture, carpeting, old appliances, toilets, you name it, with the exception of things like used tires or batteries or old television sets. You can pretty much put anything you want out at the street, and it attracts massive crowds. I am going to take you on a ride through the neighborhood, and we'll just see what we see. Who knows what will happen this year. I've had in the past situations break out in my front lawn where people actually were fighting over garbage that I put out. And it's about 6 o'clock on a Friday evening, and the garbage men come on Saturday morning and do a massive pickup. So it's these hours now, which are the prime time for scavengers. You'll see a lot of people in pickup trucks, like overflowing to the maximum with garbage, with scrap metal and old lawnmowers and furniture piled on the backs of their trucks, strapped on. You'll see residents in $150,000 vehicles cramming rusty metal pipes into the back of a 7 Series BMW, for instance. You name it. So let's take a ride and I'll see if there's anything to show you. So right off the bat, you'll see one of my neighbors pulling right out in front of me without bothering to look. Now that's not unusual, but he must be in hot pursuit of the creme de la crap and is not willing to waste any time here as he scopes out the various piles. It's looking a little bit light. Now maybe some of the residents have chosen, like I have, to not throw away all of their furniture. Maybe they're economizing, who knows? But you do see some piles here. Now it's a little bit late in the day, so it's possible that a lot of it's already been picked over. And you'll notice at the intersection a prime example of one of these vehicles that prowls the neighborhood, loaded to the brim with scrap metal and various crap about to fall off the back. An antique table with no drawers. I see some disgusting pillows. Somebody will definitely take this pallet because I think you can get like $5 or $10 for a pallet. A whole bunch of trash bags. Now this person chose to just go ahead and park in the middle of the street and then give me the screw face for having the nerve to look at her like, get out of the way. Okay, this will attract a lot of people. I see we have a whole family out here. And you have the pickup trucks. There's the U-Hauls. Oh, this looks like It's attracted quite a crowd. Various chairs and bed frames. Now, I have to say, I am all for people coming and taking the items, and if they can use them, if they can resell them, if they can get money for scrap metal, by all means, I think it's great. It keeps it out of the landfill, and if it can benefit someone, by all means, go for it. This year is definitely nothing like previous years or the way that things used to be. This used to be a massive, massive event where the streets were just lined with things. But that might be a sign of the times, because maybe people are being a little more conscious about things they throw away. And people have gotten into Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist, and maybe they sell things now that that didn't used to be an option. We just sort of threw everything away. So definitely much different than it used to be. But of course, I have a story to tell you about the way that it once was. And I talked a little bit about in the beginning of the video about how people would come from all over, and actually fights had erupted. And as a matter of fact, it happened once on the front lawn of our property. And when I was cleaning out my great aunt's house after she passed away, we had an incredible amount of things to discard. Now, this is a little bit interesting because my great aunt was 92 when she passed away, and she was a single lady. She had never married, and she had no children. And so my father was her nephew, and he was the executor of her estate. And so he was really tasked as one of the few remaining relatives in that side of the family to handle everything. And so my dad and myself really had this massive job to go through everything. And the house that she lived in was a big Victorian home that was over 100 years old, and it had been in the family for its entire existence. My great-great-grandparents had built it, and they left it to my great aunt. She cared for her parents until their deaths there in the home, and she had every intention of remaining there until the very end. And she adored the home and everything in it, and everything had a memory to her. And sadly, in the late 80s and in the early 90s, the family members really just began all passing away. And it really was just my great aunt and my grandmother that were remaining. And they had many relatives pass away. And so as they did, their things were left to my great aunt and my grandmother. And we didn't know for a very long time, because when we would visit my great aunt's home, we would be in the main areas and the public areas. We didn't go upstairs and to this grand home, we had no idea that as each one of these family members had passed away, she would hire moving companies and have furniture, antiques, all kinds of things squirreled away into her second and third floor of her home. And when she started to get really elderly and she started to need some additional care, my parents tried to bring in staff to take care of her, and she was very, very resistant. And we really couldn't understand why she was. She definitely needed the help, and she could certainly afford to do it, but she wouldn't have it. And ultimately, as she needed more care, my parents were doing more and more, there, and started to see more of the house and realized, oh my gosh, these rooms are filled with things. Now, it really was like a hoarding situation. It wasn't like on TV where you see like filthy, disgusting things like that. But it was room after room of antiques and furniture and Persian rugs and artwork and all kinds of personal effects that she had moved into these rooms to the point to where you couldn't even walk in them. And she would just shut those doors, and there the things were. So ultimately, she passed away. And when she did, my father was the executor of the estate and had to deal with this. So he and I set out trying to figure out a plan, and we knew we had to, get rid of things. And, what we realized pretty quickly was that this wasn't a case where we could just bring in people to assess these things, because you would open up a drawer on some, antique cabinet, and there would be diamond rings in a drawer. Or, I remember in the basement, it was, a rubber boot stuffed with money. You would have just grabbed this old boot, thrown it in a dumpster, and if you hadn't looked in there, you would never have known. She hid money. She hid all kinds of things in all kinds of odd places. And so absolutely everything had to be gone through. And there was a lot of things that, were very sentimental too. I mean, the trunks that my great-great-grandparents came from Europe. And, if you remember, like in the movie Titanic, when they showed the trunks on the backs of the cars, being loaded onto the steamer to come to America and stuff like that, or to travel. I mean, that's the kind of trunks that they had. I mean, they were really, really kind of cool things, and everything was so interesting and so neat. It's like, yeah, I understand why you wanted to keep all these things, but at the same time, there's limits to how many things you can keep. And so we started going through it, and like I said, we realized that we needed to inventory everything, and that this was not a job for anyone outside the family, because we were constantly coming across valuables. So my father and I spent probably over 2 years of any kind of free time that we could find to go there and go through things and catalog and figure out what was there. And there was so many things that you do become frustrated at times, and some of the things you stop realizing the value in, and there are collectors for absolutely everything. I know that in my mind, but at some point you're just like, oh, just throw it away. I need to clear space. And there was a lot of things that we threw away, and there was a lot of things like, Christmas decorations from the 20s and 30s, and old clothing, like vintage things that would have been worn in the 30s and 40s, and old hats. And we did realize the value in a lot of that things, that there was so much. And a lot of it we did throw away, but a lot of it we did set aside. And ultimately, when we did bring in estate sale people to start going through and cataloging and kind of telling us, we said, well, tell us what's valuable here. And basically everything was. And she said, oh, I wish you wouldn't have thrown away anything, because we would have just gone through everything. What you have here is so amazing, but I bet there was even more. And it was like, there was, but you don't understand. Like, you would have been here for 2 years yourself going through everything. So at any rate, finally we had to have estate sale. And of course, we took what we wanted and things, but it was a 4-day estate sale, which I've never heard of. And she was a very well-connected estate sale business owner. And so she really was able to determine, value of everything. And she was able to have a list of people who were interested in different kinds of things, like things like, French perfume bottles that were from the 50s and things, it's like, well, here's boxes of them, and there are people that are interested in those kinds of things, and people that just collect vintage Christmas decorations or clocks, jewelry, watches, and even the stuff that wasn't valuable jewelry, like I don't know what you would call it, just more casual kinds of things. There's people that are very much into that. And there was 4 days worth of estate sales, and there were people camped out in their vehicles the day before to sort of like have their place in line so that they could be amongst some of the first people to walk through this home. And tons of stuff went. I don't know how many tables and chairs and settees and antique clocks and sewing machines and all kinds of dishes and silver and all kinds of things like that. So it was just amazing. But when the valuable stuff was sold and then the things that didn't sell at the estate sale were taken to, I guess, like shops that deal, antique shops, apparently, that this woman had contacts with and could sell things through. There was the remnants left behind, and that stuff had to go. And when we were having one of these massive garbage days, it was the perfect opportunity to be able to get rid of all this stuff. So I remember we staged it all in the garage, and then this once a year spring cleanup happens, and we thought, a dumpster alone is, hundreds and hundreds of dollars, and we would have had to have so many of them. We could just literally throw the stuff out. So I had to haul all this stuff out from the garage at this house to the curb, but it couldn't be before a certain time on Friday. So I started bringing this stuff out, and it immediately became clear that word spread like wildfire that there was a massive haul going on at this property, and people started just lining the streets to go digging through this stuff. And as I'm dragging garbage bags full of stuff out, they are literally taking them out of my hand, ripping them open, and going through things. And that's fine, but please don't dump this out on the lawn. And they're just tearing through everything. And I'm like, if you want it, take it, but don't dump it here, because the garbage men aren't going to go out and pick up bags of papers that you've strewn all about, or things that are broken in the street, and it was chaotic. But I remember there were things like, old sewing machines. I wouldn't even say antique. These were old and junky or whatever. They just didn't work. And old appliances and things that just, everybody has remnants of things that just need to be thrown out when they pass away. So because it was free, people were going crazy for it. And I remember there was a sewing machine, and this woman had it, and she was trying to create room in her Jaguar to stuff this sewing machine in the back seat. So she set it down on the street, and she's digging through her car. Well, this other woman comes up and tries to take it. And that's when a scuffle starts to break out. They start pushing, grabbing, trying to yank back and forth. And I'm like, ladies, please, it doesn't even work. Like it's not even that old. It's like from the 70s. Like it's not any value here. Just, I said, you're from this neighborhood. Like people are watching, like they're going to see you. I mean, you don't want to act like this. And they're just fighting, and yelling and stuff like that. It was unbelievable. And ultimately, when I saw someone cramming a rusty metal pipe into the back of a 7 Series BMW, I thought, I think people have lost their minds. I said, what are you going to do with that? I don't know what they were going to do with it. So ultimately, throughout the night, people kept on coming, and it got to be so damn entertaining. I literally just like opened up a chair in the garage and sat there and watched, because it was like unreal. And I was talking to this guy as I was hauling some stuff out, and he's like, do you have this or do you have that? And I'm thinking, oh, what is this, a garage sale? Like what you see here is what I have, And I said, well, what is it that you're looking for? I probably have it. And I think he was somebody from outside the neighborhood, and he was looking for like scrap metal and stuff like that. But he said, oh, I look for scrap metal, but I also look for things that are interesting. And, he wanted lawnmowers and snow blowers and things like that. So I just started talking to him a little bit. I said, well, what's the most interesting thing that you've ever garbage picked? And he didn't have to think about it for very long. He said, an urn. And I said, a what? He said, an urn full of ashes. That was the most interesting thing I ever garbage picked. I said, oh my gosh, you're kidding me. Someone threw out an urn full of ashes? Oh yeah. I said, what did you do with that? And he said, well, he took it home and he put it on his front porch. I said, well, and then what? And he said, well, it was there for about 7 years. And then he decided to throw it out. I was like, oh my God, you you meet all kinds of people. So, yeah, it was funny because after I kept on getting up at night and looking out the window, and just to see what, was going on. Because I had just wanted to see, what was dwindling and what was still there. It was just so damn interesting. And there were people all through the night, and you could see there were people that were probably residents and they didn't want to be seen. So they waited until, 11, 12 o'clock and came out there with flashlights and are looking through the piles and stuff like that. And I just thought, how funny, And so by the morning, there was really the junk left, just nothing of any kind of value. And the garbage men came, and they will stop at every house and haul all this stuff in. And they probably had to fill, there was like a dumpster on the front of the garbage truck, and they just kept throwing the stuff in there. And there was 5 dumpster loads that they loaded in there, and then it flips over the back of the garbage truck and drives off finally. So, but I will say that, this year and for the last several years, there's been so much less trash that's been out at the curb, as you see. I mean, this car here in the video in front of me is, taking like old refrigerators and stoves and things like that. So that's probably, the scrap metal and things. And then I saw a lot of people that it appears everyone must have gone out and bought the same leather sofa about 10 or 15 years ago, and now they all must be ready to throw it out, because there were quite a few of those out on the street, and there was a lot of mattresses and box springs that I saw. And the thing that people seem most interested in, at least residents, are children's play toys, like outdoor toys, like Fisher Price, plastic kitchens and kiddie pools and art easels and things like that. And those are, things that a lot of people just sell on Marketplace or whatever. But those are good things to garbage pick, if you're going to garbage pick, I suppose, because they're things that have a limited use window for most families, while their children are very young, and then they can pass it on to somebody else that can use it, for those couple of years that they're going to at most. So that seems to be what people are looking for. And, maybe this year people put this stuff out, and with a lot of people working from home, maybe everybody sort of gathered up all the stuff early. And that's why there wasn't so many things, or who knows, maybe society is being less wasteful or less prone to just throwing away everything. So anyways, it looks like we are coming to an end here, and I want to thank you for joining me. As always, if you haven't subscribed yet, it's not too late. If you have, welcome to the family. I love you for watching.